I am Shondale Wilhite, and I was once a victim of sexual and domestic abuse until one day I realized that I had a problem and decided to do something about it. Then I began to shine. I spoke out and got out of that toxic relationship. H, helped myself. I ignited my own fire. N, I never looked back. And E, I evolved. I am the published author of my first book entitled The Reality Behind the Illusion. And I am making a difference through my truths and inspiring lives on how to defeat giants of sexual and domestic abuse. I changed my mind about being afraid and ashamed of my past, and instead now I embrace it so that I can reach out to others and let them know they are not alone and they too can shine.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Shine with Shondale on Intentional Talk Radio. This is your host, Shondale Wilhite, and this platform is to help individuals free themselves of toxic relationships and situations and begin to heal in mind, body, and soul, then walk into their divine purpose. And today, we have on the show Miss Veronica Matthews, who is an accomplished and certified coach, human resource consultant, public speaker, trainer, and workshop facilitator. She is a native of Prince George County, Maryland, and a cum laude graduate at Howard University with a BBA in management concentrated in human resources. She is fulfilling her purpose to successfully coach her clients to create lives they love and fulfilling their greatest potential. Additionally, Veronica provides coaching, training, and HR consulting services to start-up and small businesses in need of quality HR support. Hello, Miss Veronica.
Hello. Good evening, Shondale. My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. First off, I do want to mention that it is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I wanted to enlighten our audience on some stats here because they are very overwhelming. And there is 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 7 boys that will be sexually assaulted by the time they reach 18. More than 90% of child sexual abuse victims know their attackers, and approximately 70% of children that die from abuse are under the age of 4. Now, here's the interesting stat, along with the others, that 3% of abused and neglected children will later abuse their own children, continuing the cycle of violence. Those are some stats for you right there.
Right, yeah.
So, Miss Veronica, you and I had a conversation, and I wanted to have you just tell the story a little bit to our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
About
Mm-hmm.
your experience with sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was grew up in a a dual parent household. You know, so my mother and father were around, and very loving. You know, have the youngest of 6 kids. So I definitely felt loved, definitely felt accepted and protected inside the home. It wasn't always the case in the outside of the home. So 9 years old, very active in playing with the other kids in the neighborhood, and there was an older boy that kind of got me alone. We were all playing tag and, all of that. And as an older boy, they got me alone and, just touched on me and did things that I wasn't aware of what was going on. And it wasn't, so it happened once and then I didn't do anything about it. I didn't say anything about it. And then it happened again on a different day. And, he went a little further than that. And I didn't know, first of all, again, what was going on because my mom, even though she had 5 girls, bless her heart, didn't have the talk with any of us. My introduction of my cycle was dirty underwear and her telling me in front of everybody's, the whole family's watching television. You need to put this on your underwear and, to catch the blood. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So I didn't necessarily I didn't know that I could go to my parents and actually tell them what was happening. And so there wasn't any penetration. There wasn't any there wasn't a rape, but there was still the violation with the fingers. And there was, just the trauma from me not knowing what was going on and knowing that this doesn't feel right, but not screaming and not calling for help and not asking for help and not telling anyone. So imagine being a 9-year-old and have that happen. And I didn't know. So I turned into myself and became very, very introverted after that. And I carried that with me through almost all the way up until beyond, kind of going out into the world. I never really told anybody. I think the first person I told, I was in college. And it was kind of one of those awareness conversations. And it was a good male friend. I felt comfortable enough to tell him. And, it was, that's when I started to recognize that I was torturing myself by holding on to the memories and holding on to the abuse and holding on to the results of how that impacted me. And I didn't know, but, it turned on feelings and desires that I never had. So in college that, started acting out on those and really just didn't fully know. I was aware at that time, feeling much better about the ability to get information from elsewhere. But I didn't heal myself, and I didn't know that I needed healing. I just knew that something bad happened to me, and I never told anybody. And that's how it was.
And I'm so glad that you can speak out about it now, because at least you became self-aware that there was a reason why when you got to college, you start acting out these feelings that you had from something that happened to you when you were very young. So like the stats say, most of the victims know who their attacker is that violates them. And in this case, you knew who it was. And they did that on more than, one occasion. And like you say, you weren't really able to talk to your mom about it because there really wasn't conversation going on in the house.
No.
Growing up and the things that happened to you, and then just the fact that, the whole experience about your cycle, and, just being outed in front of the entire family seems like, it was kind of embarrassing,
Yeah, definitely.
And so I can relate to that because I wasn't given any information either. So I kind of had to do the same thing to get information from outside and that kind of thing.
Shonda, this is Shonda, this is Kenny the engineer. You're starting to fade out.
What about now?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Better.
Okay. And so just being given the information from different people and learning things kind of on your own, I can relate to that. And then, just basically trying to figure out where these feelings came from when you became very introverted. It's like, oh, well, where did these feelings come from? And then acting out on them later on. And that's usually what kind of happens. You become a little promiscuous or a lot promiscuous when those things tend to happen to you. So when did you realize that, you needed to actually do something to help yourself along as far as dealing with what happened to you as a kid?
It came to me in because my first college experience was away from home. I was very sheltered, despite not necessarily having the open lines of communication with my family. I was still very sheltered. So my idea of getting away after high school was to go away, but I didn't want to go away too far. So I went about 45 minutes away, and I stayed on campus. And because I was, acting out, being promiscuous, and just wasn't going to class, I was about ready to be on academic probation. I woke up one morning and I was like, what are you doing? Who are you, and what are you doing? And what is your next step? And I realized that, I just needed some healing, and I needed to talk to someone about what happened and what I was not processing, and how this was changing the trajectory of my life. Because at that point, I didn't have good grades, and didn't really have a lot of true friends, and didn't really feel good about myself. So I was like in this situation of just in a real bad space. And I knew that the first thing I knew I could do something about was go to my family to be able to help me to get into another college. So that's when I transferred to Howard. And from there, I had to grow up a lot because my parents said, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for it. And so luckily it wasn't the thousands and thousands of dollars it is now. It was only $2,800. And so I was able to work the summer and get that money, and then they paid for my books, and then said, okay, we'll make a deal with you. You work and you pay your tuition, we'll pay your books, and then the next semester you pay your books and we'll pay your tuition. And so I was like, okay, well, I can work with that. And so then I started, they didn't necessarily have the services on campus, but I realized that being a student that I had access to certain services. So I started looking for people to talk to, and became introduced to therapy in that way. And then I only had a couple sessions here and there, but it was enough to be able to get me to the point where I was no longer silent about it, and I no longer blamed myself for the fact that, I was a little bit more developed and taller than the other girls. So, maybe that's what attracted him to me, and maybe that's why he started touching me, because, I was, I was more developed, and I looked like an older. Yeah, I looked like an older girl. And so when I stopped blaming myself, and so that's when I learned about journaling, and I started really processing my feelings and putting them out on paper, because I still wasn't comfortable telling a lot of people, because I didn't know if it would be a situation of them throwing it back up in my face later, or judging me as a result. And so I still didn't share a lot with people, but I would write it out, and I would write out scenarios of, of my feelings, of how I blamed myself, and how, I would release that, and then I would turn to the Lord to be able to help me to get over it. And so it took a while. It took a long while. I don't think I really fully released the molestation, and then reaction to it, and then my abuse of myself as a result. I didn't turn to drugs or anything, but just sex is a form of
yes,
abuse for yourself if you're doing it for the wrong reason. So, when I was able to release that, I was in my 30s, and I was living in Richmond at the time, and that's really when I was active in the church and really just got to see myself for who I really was and who God saw me as. And so it took all of that time really for me to heal.
And it is a process, and it doesn't just happen overnight. And the fact that you talk about journaling, I think that is so important that we figure out how to process our feelings. And a lot of times, like you say, we can't communicate it to other people because we fear judgment. But I was always writing things down, and that was the way I felt like I could actually express my feelings. But when you say, just process them, I think that that's a good way of dealing with situations that you don't necessarily want to talk to people about, because we tend to hold so much stuff in. And I think that if we can just release it some kind of way, and journaling is a good way to go about doing that, because I have so much that I've written down and that I can go back to and be like, wow, remember when I was there. And now, I've gotten past that, and now I'm here. And so it shows us really our growth from where we were to where we're going, so to say, or where we've or where we're trying to get to. And so the fact that just going through that whole process and then finally getting therapy, because it was like you got it then. You got to a point to where you say, well, you know what, I need some help. And that's what I want people to realize, that you can't do this thing by yourself, especially when you experience trauma like that. You have to have someone sometimes to help you process that. Like, what happened and why did that happen to me? And what can I do to make me better? And so, yeah. And so I saw on, I follow you. And so I saw where you have these lives where it's called Let It Go, the physical purge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the segment I do, and I've done it since March of 2018. It's a weekly Facebook Live, and I call it Winning Wednesdays. And one of the more recent episodes that I did was the purge, the emotional purge. And so in the emotional purge, very similarly to the process that I followed, is when you hold on to things, it blocks you from receiving anything else. And it really, when you hold on to things that don't serve you, whether it be a habit, whether it be a person, whether it be an addiction, whether it be just a mindset that no longer serves you. It may have served you in the past for a particular purpose or reason, but it's served its course. It's ran its course, and the longer we hold on to it, the more damage we do to ourselves. And I realized that because I had gone through what I did, I know that I'm not alone in that, and that there are a whole bunch of other people out here that are just holding on to stuff. And so it just came to me. God dropped it in my spirit. It's like, let it go. And actually, it was a particular something had happened with my uh let's see, was it with the manager that I had or something? Something happened and it just came to me, let it go. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, let it go. Yeah, that's applicable in a whole bunch of different situations. And so I looked back into my life and did some research, and then I was like, okay, well, these are the tips that I came up with in order to be able to really help people let it go, whether it be an emotional trauma or an emotional situation. It's, first of all, that there's so many things that are going on in your mind. It's too much clutter in there. It's too much head trash. It's kind of like, when you get to the point where it's time to clean up, you start in your mind as well as the physical purge. And so, to first name what it is, in whether naming what it is could be that person, could be the situation, could be the incident that hurt you, the job you lost, the job you got fired from, the person that left you, the person that beat you, the person that whomever that embarrassed you in a certain situation, name it. Because if you don't give specificity to it, then it's like, okay, well, what are you truly letting go of? If you don't know and you're afraid to say it, then it really, you maintain the power in the thing as opposed to the power within yourself. And then, forgiving and really understanding that what was the benefit why was I holding on to this thing? And what did I make good out of it? Because I held on to the feeling of looking for love in all the wrong places, and going from this guy to that guy to that guy, because I was looking for love, and I made it mean something about me that I didn't have love. And so I was looking for it elsewhere. So that was the benefit for me, that, oh, well, he's got the love that I'm looking for, right? And so, and then I also had to understand what it was costing me. Costing me not only my reputation, being loose and all of that, but it was every person that I was with, I left myself with them. And I'm fragmented out here in all these different places. And so no wonder I wasn't whole, because Johnny had some, and Tommy had some, and Lisa had some, and all these people had a piece of me, and I had nothing.
Wow.
So, I really had to understand and forgive me, and to forgive him. He has since gone on he's died now, but I forgave him while he was living. He never knew I forgave him, but I forgave him. And I had to come to terms with that between me. That was a come to Jesus moment right there, because there was no other way that I would have been able to do that. And then I chose to let it go. And, once I chose to let it go, that just making the decision is not enough. You actually have to release it.
Release it.
Let it go.
And, choose to let it go. Why do people choose to just hold on to it?
Yeah.
Choose to let it go.
Yeah. Because it feels too good. Some people get addicted to the hurt that it causes.
There you go.
If the hurt feels good because it keeps me from getting close to people. That hurt feels good because people know my story and they feel sorry for me. That hurt feels good because, for whatever reason, whatever benefit they derive from that hurt, they make it worthwhile to hold on to it.
To hold on to it. And and sometimes I look at that like you kind of get comfortable in your pity party, because you want people to always feel sorry for you. And so you just choose to hang on to it instead of just releasing that thing, letting it go. And like you say, you have all of this head trash. I like that, head trash, because we do hold on to a lot of the trash. And then, we wonder why some of the things that just even come out of our mouth. I mean, we can look beautiful and somebody's attracted to you from a mile away, but the time you open up your mouth and talk, it's like, oh my gosh,
Right.
what in the world? you know?
Mhm.
And so just cleaning all of that up, because like everything, like you say, everything starts in the mind, to where
Mhm.
we got to clean out all of that stuff, filter all of that stuff out, and then forgive ourselves for the things that we did.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when we don't forgive ourselves, then we walk around in this guilt,
Yep.
like I should have did this, and well, I don't know, it's all my fault about this, and release that,
Mhm.
release that, because
Yeah.
we get so caught up in all of that, and it's like we can't move forward. We just stay
I know.
stuck.
Yep.
We
Stuck.
stay stuck, stuck in
Yeah.
this situation.
Yeah. And more so, sometimes it's not even it's not just forgiving ourselves for what we felt, the role that we felt that we may or may not play, knowing that it's not our fault. It's never our
Mhm.
fault.
Mhm.
But the forgiveness comes in the actions that we took after the fact,
Exactly.
and what we did in the meantime until we knew to do better. That's what we
Mhm.
forgive ourselves for. Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. And I can feel that too, because I too had to forgive myself for a lot of the things that I did, because I understand where you talk about when we cope with the things, and how you would what was it costing you, your reputation, as far as you
Mhm.
being this loose woman or whatever. You didn't want that to be your
Mhm.
reputation, so you had to basically choose to do something else, because
Yes.
everything is a choice. Thing
Mhm.
in life is basically just a choice. And so then you move on, and so how did you end up in HR?
Oh, well, when I was in Howard, my sister at the time I didn't have a computer at home, and my sister at
Mhm.
the time was a director of human resources for the company that she worked, and she had to work sometimes on the weekend, and I would go into her office and use the computer to type up my term papers.
Mhm.
And I would sit with her and say, like, why are you working on a Sunday? She'd tell me, she's like, well, it's open enrollment season and I have to do this, and then I've got this grievance coming up, and I've got this situation with this manager that needs some training. And I was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And then my dad at the same time was a chief of a division in the District of Columbia government, and I would hear his side of the story from how he had a team and what his people were doing, and how he was in maintenance. So when a water main broke, or when a pipe broke, or the heat was turned off, he would be out there with his people in the trenches. And I was like, man, that's something not a lot of people do. And so I
Right.
learned from both sides of management, and I was like, oh well, this is solving problems with people. I love it. What else would I
Mhm.
do? And because I'm not mathematically inclined, not science inclined, I love people.
Mhm.
And so this was the perfect opportunity for me. And so that's kind of how I developed my affinity for HR.
Wow. Just
Mhm.
intrigued by solving problems for people.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like that, because
Yeah.
we we all try to find our purpose in life
Mhm.
and what fulfills us. And then when we actually go through things ourselves and deal with things ourselves, we feel like, we become the expert in that area. And so we want to help others, like, oh, I know all about that. I
Mhm.
want to help somebody else. And that's kind of how I believe we find our purpose in what it is that we really like to do or
Mhm.
want to do.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so you have your own consulting company, do you?
I do. I do. I started in 2016 while I was working full time, and because I had been introduced to coaching in 2015. I took my first coaching course. I had been doing it in the workplace, but I didn't really know all around me that there was a coaching industry that was building and broadening. And so I took a course and I loved it. And I was like, wow, I think I could have a bigger impact if I had my own company and not just worked with the people that I worked with through my employer. And so I started in 2016 and had a couple of clients that I saw after work, and then branched off into doing things on the weekend, and that kind of led me into doing more coaching and training, and the desire to work with, because I'm an and person. I don't really like to be tied down to one particular thing. So the coaching and the HR consulting, I kind of want to do both. And I always think of that movie. I can't remember the name of it, but the guy's name was Radio. And she asked him what kind of,
that's the name of the
kind
movie.
of cake you Radio, was that it? Okay. What kind of cake you want? And he was, I can't remember the options of the cake, and he said both. And that's kind of how I am, so I want to do both coaching and consulting, and I can do it. So where I am now.
May I ask a question? Sure. Okay, this is Colette Williams from Change Matters, and I've been listening. And my question is, we have quite a few MFTs in our midst, and lots of people who are doing coaching. And one of the things that I found very interesting is there are a lot of MFTs who've gone through quite a bit in their growth, in their journey, in their lives. And how do you reconcile so that you can become a coach, so that you can help other people? And a couple of people who I know that are MFTs who are also in the office, they are either practicing or they have some kind of interaction with clients. How do you get to the point where you can help other people in a therapeutic fashion? How do you draw the line? And I know that, as I said, I know that there are therapists who do have a therapist, and there's no way around not having a therapist. When you're involved with so many people who've got major issues, it's challenging not to somehow that gets into your bloodstream. How do you either get around that? How do you avoid that? And how do you get to a point where that is reconciled and you can help others? How do you do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, good question. And one of the things that I do before I onboard any client and accept the client into my practice is I share with them the differences between coaching, therapy, consulting, and mentorship. And so I, as a coach, I do not cross over into the realm of therapy. I ensure that a person that we work together, that they're healed and whole and they're ready to move forward. And I do have a number of therapists that I'm connected to that they both coach and they're also therapists. And I think that that's a great combination because it can help a person heal and then it can help them move forward. I'm only on the moving forward side. If you come to me and there's still some baggage with you're not fully healed, your relationship, there's still trauma there, I really recommend that you go to see a therapist first and then get the healing that you need. And when you're ready to move forward, I'm right there with you. But I can't help you heal because I don't have that training. I don't have that background. I don't have that knowledge. I know what I've been through, but in coaching, I don't tell you what to do. I help you I'll help you find what's inside of you and pull that out, because oftentimes fear, through situations that we've been through, we hide ourselves and we pile all this emotional baggage on top of that. And so I help people do, peel back the layers, yes, but I can't help you heal. So I do make that distinction.
So there is a distinction, and that makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, that makes me feel really good, because I have looked at people and I said, she is an MFT. So, but I see now that there is a distinction between the coaching, the mentoring, and the therapeutic. The therapeutic session. So there is a distinction, and I often wondered how that really works, because I do see that some people use both of those, a coach, a therapist, and blah, blah. So that does make sense. I'm really glad that you clarified that for me. And it does make sense when you say that, because therapist usually has more, she handles the pathology, and a coach typically would handle the emotional side, and not simply not the pathology side.
Right, yeah. So a coach helps with structure and with patterns and habits. So to create positive structures, positive habits that help you move forward. So once you actually have your toolkit that the therapist helps you build, because I have my own therapist and I have my own coach. So makes sense. So my therapist helps me build my toolkit for managing my everyday life. And then my coach helps me use that toolkit in the various situations that I come across, and helps me move forward with that. And that's just me personally.
Do you think people know the difference?
They do not. And I think there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people out here that call themselves coaches and that haven't been in a class to save their life. And there's a lot of people that call themselves the ability to help you through this, that, and the third. And they really don't have the training in the background, and it's really muddying the waters. And a lot of people, you've heard of church hurt. I've seen a lot of people that are getting coach hurt. And it's really burning it's really burning me up, because given that the industry of that team, and it really is, I got that from Cheryl Wood. I can't take the credit for that. She said, people would get hurt.
That's
right. Yep.
Well, that does make a lot of sense, because, as I said, I do see people who consider themselves a therapist, a coach, but they don't have a distinction. And when I look at that and I listen to what people are saying, and then I look at their actions, and I look at how they interact with other people, and I'm thinking, no.
Yeah.
How could you tell someone how to do something, how to live, how to be? Look at the marks that you're making. So you're right. I do see that there is a distinction, and the distinction needs to be real clear. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because that does make sense. That does make sense to me.
Yeah, it really does, because sometimes you have people that will come and say, well, hey, I need to talk to a coach. And I had somebody to approach me and wanted a conversation with a coach. And so after talking to that person, I was like, no, you need therapy. Because it went so far beyond the coaching.
Yes.
That, it was just like, you first off need this help here, because you're too far gone.
Right. And people
before
don't
you can get coaching.
Right. And people don't understand that, one, that there is a distinction, and two, they don't want to be told that they need therapy, that they need counseling, they need psychiatric help. They don't. Nobody wants to be told that. They figure they can kind of brush it over and put some alcohol on it, and it's done. And now all I need is a coach.
And don't you know that I've talked to several people that felt that same way, and once they went ahead and got the therapy, the first thing that they said was, I should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, I should have done this a long time ago, because it instantly it starts helping them to process things that happen, to really think about it, talk about it, and then go back and kind of analyze, well, this must be why this happened, and I felt this way, you know, kind of thing. And so they really like it. And so then they just continue doing it. And that's why I encourage it so much. I always tell people, please talk to somebody, talk to a therapist. And then it's also good that whomever you choose has dealt with something like that before too. Instead of it just being, I understand you've taken courses and you've gone to school and you studied it, but for me, if you dealt with something like that and that caused you to go into that field so that you can help others, that's the person that I want to talk to.
And you know what? That's really, really true, because one, you can't walk in a place and tell somebody what's there if you've never been there.
Exactly.
So I get that. I really and truly get that part. And then the other part of that is what I struggle with is when I see people and I see their walk, I'm looking at their walk and their walk isn't any better. Mm-hmm. So how do you tell someone what's best when you're walking backwards? You still have not uprighted yourself. You're literally walking backwards. So how are you? It's easy to become an MFT when you've got the books in front of you, but the books are not what gets the job done. That's purely academic. That's purely academic. That's not a life cycle. It's purely academic. And the one thing that I always refer back to is when my husband applied to become a teacher. He worked at Xerox in El Segundo in LA for umpteen years. And he decided he wanted to quit working at Xerox and he wanted to teach. Well, he went to have his interview and meeting with the principal and blah, blah. Well, he comes back out and says he got the job. The one thing that was more important than his academics was the fact that he'd been on the job 7 years and beyond. They wanted someone with the practical experience. They did not, and I've come across that, I can't tell you how many times, countless times. But one of the things that we're not taught in school is how important the life's experience is and how the life's experiences are. Because that's when you really connect with people. When your life experiences mirror them in some kind of way, in a variety of ways.
True.
Yes. It's not simply about the academics. And as we say a lot on Conversations with Colette and Corliss, the paper is real good. Absolutely. We praise you and thank God you got the paper. What is your what is your practical experience like? What is your journey like? Okay. What is that like? Have you had the experiences that help to shape the person that you should be when you interact with these people who have these issues?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And from a coach's perspective, that helps. The practical experience helps as well, but also the ability to help people see themselves is the piece that we mostly help with, is the self-awareness and kind of asking people the questions that get up underneath of what it is that they're experiencing on the surface, because the therapy helps a lot with that from a traumatic standpoint and a healing standpoint. But when it comes to just kind of figuring out, okay, what has you doing these things? Like you said before, kind of the patterns that you develop is like, why are you doing them? The coaching helps in that, and the practical experience helps, but also I don't necessarily have to be a white male leader in order to help you understand the impact that you're having on your team. And that's kind of where I come in from a coaching standpoint.
Right. Okay.
That was very good. That was very enlightening because so many people do get it confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to, and when they finally get to a point to where they do want to talk to somebody. So who would you say that your target audience is, Veronica, when it comes to what you actually do?
What I do so my target audience in corporate America is that leader that has they're failing as a leader. They can't connect to their team. Everybody's complaining, turnover is high, and they're like one foot out the door. But the organization wants to invest in them to possibly turn it around. So don't call myself a fixer, but I can help in that regard with helping you get back on the right track, to communicate with your team, to understand, help you understand what a leader is and the leader that you want to be, and help you get back on the right track. When it comes to my individual clients, the ones that are drawn to me now are the ones that are coming for confidence. They've been living life as someone else, and they really want to live life as their true, authentic self, and they just don't know how to do that. They don't have the confidence within them. They don't trust themselves, and I help them build their self-trust, and I help them to build their confidence and actually have experiences that help them to understand that there is their confidence and then their worth. And I help them build both their self-worth and how they think of themselves, and then their confidence in various situations, because you can actually have experiences that cause you to lose your confidence, because if you've never been in this experience before, it's brand new, you're not sure what to do. But if you know that you are worthy of being there and you're there for a divine reason, then you can always go back to that and then help yourself move forward. And that's what I help clients do.
And I think that was the key word, that their divine experience and finding themselves, because, like you say, we often do find ourselves living as someone else, and we get into positions, like you say, in corporate. And we're living out this role as someone else. It's not necessarily who we want to be, but we're living out this role. And sometimes that could cause the failure as them being a leader, because that's not who they really want to be. They're playing out this character, this role, this position, and it's hard to be something that you're not.
Yes. Yep.
It's hard to be something that you're not. And so when you say that, because that situation has happened to where I've gone to, HR for that particular reason, where I felt like the leader wasn't a great leader while I was in corporate. And so there was like this investigation and this whole thing, and how, you go in and you try to turn the situation around. But sometimes it's just like, oh my God, you wonder, like, how did you get this position? And so the fact that that's what you do is intriguing to me, because I've often wondered, like, does anything even happen? What is the process? What is done? What do you do in those situations? And so for I would like to know, what do you do in those kind of situations, or is that something that you can discuss?
Yes. So usually it comes down to the point where it's enough people have complained and enough people have left the company because of this person, that the organization has realized that, wait a minute, something's wrong. Before we just throw the baby out with the bathwater, let's see if we can do something. So they call in the coach. The coach comes in. They have the conversation with the person. It's like, okay, where what is your opinion of how things are going? And it's like, what do you see? And it's like, okay, well, this is the reality of what everyone else sees, and how can we reconcile the difference there? And then help them to understand, well, you make these decisions, and it's like, what was your mindset behind making these decisions, and how can we help you to? And it's like, oh, well, I did that because someone else did it, like you said, you're following someone else's blueprint. It's like, okay, well, what is do you want, and who do you want to, and what kind of leader do you want to be? And then helping them to resolve that. So through that self-awareness, through those exploratory questions of who you are and how do you show up, and is that truly how you want to show up, and help them to see themselves, hold the mirror to themselves as a person, and then as a leader, and then as a leader within this organization. What does all that look like? And then helping them to reconcile that, and help giving them tools and strategies then to be able to go forward from here, because you're really embarrassed if, someone has called in a coach on you, you're like, oh, wow, everybody thinks I'm incompetent, I can't do this job, and everybody wants me out. No, that's not the case, so pick your face up off the floor and let's get busy, because you can turn this thing around. And if you're willing to put in the work, then you can actually make it happen, and you can come out on the other side a great leader. And I had a situation in a company before where this person had came to my attention because someone filed a harassment claim against her. And then after we investigated that and cleared it up, I worked with her, and then I left the company because I got laid off. But I found out that she was team leader in the next project that they had. So she was able to turn it around. And all it took was someone holding the mirror to her and holding her accountable for her actions.
Wow. And that I'm glad you broke that down and explained that, because when I know that that's what actually happens, there's a process to where, okay, let's look at this, let's look at that, and let's find a solution to how we're going to resolve this problem that it seems to be in this department or whatever. And so the fact that, I understand that now, it helps me. It helps me in an instance where, if I'm in a situation like that ever again, then also it allows you to look at yourself. It's also one of those self-awareness kind of things, like, okay, what am I doing? Is there something that I'm doing that's causing, all of this friction between the two of us, or what? So it's a two-way thing that you really kind of have to look at and evaluate also for yourself, because if one person is going to be trying to better themselves, and then the other is not, and then they stay, you're still going to be butting heads some kind of way.
Exactly.
You're still going to be butting heads some kind of way. And in my case, when I start complaining too much, I just leave. That may not always be the best thing to do, but I just feel like if you're a complainer, there's just you got to do something about it, And so my result sometimes is usually just leave, just do something about it, do something different.
Yeah, exactly. Understand that if there's toxicity going on around you, sometimes it is best to remove yourself from
That's
that.
the word right there. That's the word right now. Well, our hour, it always goes by so very fast. We have a few more minutes, so I can't even see if there anybody that wanted to make a comment or ask a question or anything like that.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
So my question is, I was reading an article about autoimmune diseases, and the what the article was talking about was how people develop these autoimmune diseases and they don't even know it. And one of them is that people are involved with so many toxic people. Not only is the environment toxic, not only are the buildings that we work in toxic, the food that we eat toxic, the cars that we drive toxic, everything is toxic. But we're also involved with toxic people, and we don't know, one, that they're toxic, and don't know how to get away from toxic people. And the toxicity of everything is such that if you don't surround yourself with good, positive people, it's hard to get away from the environment. But your space, even though we're all connected, your space should be free of toxic people.
So true.
That is a challenging thing to do. So do you have any advice for how to get rid of toxic people? Because you could just say, I'm in a bubble, get out of my bubble. Okay?
Yeah, it's so
it is a
one
challenge.
of the first things. One of the first things that I would say is the awareness of, is this person doing good to me or harm to me?
Yeah.
And if the answer to that question is yes, that the person is doing harm to me, then it's like, in what way? And then what do I need to do to release myself from them? And sometimes it's as much as having a conversation with them to let them know that you recognize what has been happening. You're finally taking stock and notice of what has been happening, and your boundaries now are set in a different way so that you're no longer going to allow that. Sometimes people will omit themselves from their life as a result of having that conversation because no one has ever had that conversation with them before. Then you have those people that once you have that conversation with them, want to try to make it all about you, and they want to try to make it your fault. And then what you do in that case is don't fall for the bait and stand up for who you are and what you want in your life, and let them know that you will be removing yourself from their life. So it goes both ways. Either you can stand up and get them out, or you can say, okay, I exit myself from this situation, and, it's been wonderful knowing you. I can't say it's been wonderful all the time, but I've learned my lesson and I'm moving forward.
Right. And toxic people are not going to say, hey, I'm toxic. You might want to get away from me.
Right.
They
are not going to do that. Okay? They're just going to say, hey, it's me. I'm here. So you must recognize, and I was quite surprised that the article talked about not only the environment, but also the people that we engage with or live with or have in our families or have in our cities or have somehow. And the toxicity of people it's just, oh my God, really? You want to really? You want to live like that? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's so true.
Wow. Yeah. So
true.
It can be challenging to get away from people like that.
Exactly, especially if they're family,
and they're in the same household, right? It's like you can't always leave in that situation, but you can tell them what you will not put up with any longer. You can hold your ground on that.
And you can stand your ground on that. This has really been an awesome conversation. I am so glad that you were on the show with us today, Miss Veronica, and sharing your life story with us. I think that it takes a lot to do that, and I appreciate your bravery and your courage for speaking out. And I just want, like I say, for others to be able to do the same thing, that are, holding things in and that can't move forward because they're holding on to so much stuff, and just release it. Because, I mean, it's so much better for your health. I mean, people don't realize how that could even improve your health when you release those things from your life, and
Right.
how you can feel better. You know, we're dying of heart attacks and, you know,
Right.
all of these health conditions, and just holding on to things is what causes a lot of that. And,
Right.
you know, we can add time to our lives if we can just let it go.
Yeah, and that's where the autoimmune diseases come in, because you can't live in a space where the environment is toxic. Then the people that you interact with or engage with are also toxic. You
That's
cannot,
right.
the body cannot survive in that kind of environment.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So
the
true.
body attacks itself. Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
it begins to attack itself. Yes, that's exactly what happens. And that's where they've identified the autoimmune diseases. That's how they've done that. The body's attacking.
Mhm. So very true. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and sign on off. Thank you for tuning in on,
Thank you for having me.
yes, on the Shine with Shondale show on Intentional Talk Radio. And join us next week, the same time, 7 p.m. Central Standard. And y'all have a great week.